Everyone. Welcome to our professional development session today. Thank you so much for joining us, and you're in for a treat with this training. So my name is Stacy Park, and I serve on the VACE board. I'm also in the professional development circle for the VACE board, and I'm the vice president of the Apple Valley chapter, which is in the Winchester area. So I'm just happy to be here today to facilitate this training, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our topic and introduce our trainers today. So the title of our workshop today is Adapting Learning for All, Curriculum Modifications in Early Childhood Settings. This interactive virtual session will explore curriculum modifications, intentional changes to activities, materials, or instruction to maximize children's participation in inclusive early childhood classrooms. Participants will learn how to identify effective modifications that enhance the environment, schedule, activities, and transitions. This session will provide practical tools and resources that can be used during classroom instruction, including real-life examples of curriculum modifications in action. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. We have Danielle Campbell, and she is an early childhood education specialist at TTAC ODU, Old Dominion University, with a dually endorsed master's degree in inclusive early childhood education. She comes from the public school system as a practitioner with experience in early childhood special education and pre-K through 4 inclusion. Having completed both undergraduate and graduate degrees at James Madison University, she has a passion for including all children in any environment. Alongside her co-teaching partner, she was part of the first pre-K team ever to be part of VDOE's Excellence in Co-Teaching initiative to put pre-K on the map. We also have joining us today Lisa Gehring, and she is an early childhood specialist with VDOE's Training and Technical Assistance Center at Old Dominion University. With nearly 2 decades of experience in public schools, she has served as a school psychologist and special education program specialist, leading systems change to create inclusive preschool classrooms. Lisa collaborates with school divisions to improve inclusive practices for young children and serves on multiple regional and state early childhood initiatives. A former DEC ARPY ambassador and VADEC board member, Lisa is committed to supporting educators, school divisions, and young learners in advancing inclusive education across Virginia. So we are so very happy to have Danielle and Lisa here with us today. And thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to this presentation. I will now turn it over to you, Danielle and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Again, welcome to Adapting Learning for All, Curriculum Modifications in Early Childhood Settings. My colleague Lisa and I are really excited to be here with you guys today, but first we want to know who you are. So if you could please type in the chat your role, we would love to see what type of practitioners we have with us today. And then Lisa already added into the chat that you will be needing just a blank sheet of paper and something to write with today.
Autumn said that she wears various hats, including adjunct instructor, content developer, and trainer. Stephanie shared that she is an early childhood coordinator. Great.
Awesome.
And Diana says that she is an assistant pre-K teacher for 3-year-olds. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. We are going to tailor this to everybody. So whether you're mainly teaching general education, special education, if you're a leader, if you're a teacher, if you're a paraprofessional or an assistant, you are definitely in the right place. To start off with a little activity, we want to kind of gauge where you all are in your knowledge behind curriculum modification. So this is not a gotcha. This is just a warm-up activity where we're going to waterfall into the chat. So you'll pull up your chat on your Zoom, and we are going to use these 3 challenging behaviors on the left-hand side. And what we want you to do is type a solution of how you would handle this challenge in your classroom, but don't hit enter yet. We want to all press enter at the same time. So that way we can see everybody's response and kind of see what other people are really doing out there to resolve conflicts that arise all the time in our preschool settings. So the first example that we're going to talk about is hitting others. So if you have ever worked with a child who hits others, or to put it more nicely, is still practicing keeping their hands to themselves, how would you handle or resolve this solution in your classroom? Go ahead and type it into the chat, but don't hit enter yet. We'll do a countdown from 3, okay? I'm going to type something in the chat as well.
All right, is everyone ready? So I'll count down and then we'll all hit enter at the same time. So 3, 2, 1, enter. So we see, reading a social story about why it's important to keep our hands to ourselves, using visual reminders of rules, such as nice hands, teach regulation skills, helping words through social stories and explicit instruction and modeling. Love that. Using words or talking to a teacher to get help instead of hitting. Yep. And then redirection, watching closely to see why the child is hitting.
Lisa, these are fantastic responses and things that we are going to talk about today during our session. So you're all on the right track. Let's do the next one. So this child, was there one more? Oh, yeah.
Nope, go ahead. We can go to that in a minute.
I'm sure it'll apply to this next one as well. The next prompt is, this child needs support to clean up or transition to a new activity. So if you're in a pre-K setting, you know how much fun cleanup time is. So go ahead, take a moment, type something in the chat. Don't hit enter yet.
Okay, is everyone ready? So 3, 2, 1, hit enter. And so I see using a visual timer, using songs to indicate that the transition is happening. Love the idea of warnings. So 5 minutes, 3 minutes, then 1 minute. Reminders as well as visual supports to help the child. Use first then schedule, first clean up, and then we do the next activity. Set up timers and give verbal warning before transition times and make it a game. Ask them to pick up a few specific items as well as give them a schedule for the day. Diane, I love that, making it a game, because we know that is definitely something that's a little bit more motivating for children when it is time to transition.
And
so Danielle,
Lisa, I was just reading the response that we had referring back to hitting others. And this one is appropriate for all of these because it's talking about using age-appropriate language. We have to talk to our children at the level where they are understanding developmentally. So Stephanie, you hit the nail on the head. And I love how you're checking in on the child who got hit, because we do have to make sure that the child is okay, of course. And then just sharing strategies for the child that hit. So instead of just saying, no, don't do that, you're giving them a replacement behavior and an alternative other than just saying, no, don't do that. This can be applied to everything we're talking about. Okay, now I'm really curious to see what you all think about difficulty remaining with the group. So this will be our last prompt, our last challenging behavior. So you have a child who has difficulty remaining with the group, go ahead, type something into your chat. All right, Lisa, do you think we're ready?
I think we're ready. So 3, 2, 1, enter. Someone says, as long as they're not interrupting, allow them to come to the group when they're ready. Let them leave the group if it's appropriate by giving choices or assigning them a role such as helper to engage them. Use a preferred peer to hold their hand or sit next to them. Sounds like someone had the same idea. Incorporate a preferred book, song, or character into center time. Have the child be either the first in the line or the last in the line to be closest to the teacher and give them a task to complete. Like hold the teacher, oh, that's a good one. Hold the teacher's water bottle, incorporate action songs when transitioning from place to place. And then give them the reason, I guess the reason behind it, such as safety, tell them we're preparing them for school rules as they get bigger, play a fun game, etc. Why? Okay, sorry. The why behind it. Sorry, guys.
Okay, Stephanie, I love how you mentioned to hold the teacher's water bottle because I used to have my children do that. I had one designated person who I knew just needed a little extra something to hold my water bottle. It was one that would close, of course, and had a handle, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And it's something that's so simple, right? You can do that all day long. Okay, thank you all for participating in our little opening activity. So now we want to know, how did that kind of make you feel? Pick an emoji and either put it in the chat or use your Zoom React just to show us the feeling you had when you had to participate in this activity. Did you love it? Did it make you angry? Did it make you giggle? Did it make you feel happy, excited? Just give us an emoji reaction.
Were you proud of the ideas that you came up with? Did you feel like you struggled with that a little?
Oh, we got a emoji thinking
Like it?
with the hand on the chin. Oh, we have a smile and an upside down smile. And it was great to hear others' ideas. That's our goal for you guys today, to learn from each other as well. So again, that activity was not a gotcha, we're testing your knowledge. That was we want to see where you all are at the beginning of this presentation so we kind of know how to tailor the rest of the presentation to fit your needs. And if you still want to add a word or a reaction to the chat, please feel free. But for the sake of time, we are going to plug along just to briefly review what we're going to do today. Now, Stacy already read to you the whole description of this presentation. So we're not going to read these objectives to you verbatim. But what we want you to know is that our job today is to make sure that everyone here is on the same page before working with students. And I want to say students with and without disabilities who need more support in your classroom. And I emphasize students with and without disabilities because we know as early childhood practitioners, it is not just the students that have an IEP that need all of this extra support. So we are going to give you practical strategies. We're going to use real-time examples, and we're going to also use some examples of children that exist really in the world and use them to help us drive the presentation and come up with some examples.
So before we move to the content for today's session, we do just want to point out some alignments that we've made sure that we've worked in for our training today. The first are the NACCE standards, and I'm going to drop the link right here in the box for you all. if you have not been familiar with the NAEYC standards, but specifically the fourth and seventh standards are our focus today, and that's teaching to enhance each child's development and learning, and then also designing physical environments that are safe, engaging, and accessible. So we want to make sure that when we're working with students, we can make sure that they can participate and engage with the activities that we're choosing to use as a teacher, and that also the environment is one in which they can move fluidly and access the materials within their day. It is also aligned, Danielle, with
the DEC recommended practices. So I have a link for you all for that one in the chat. And really, we just want to raise your awareness of these resources and show you where the research is bridging the gap with practice. So everything that you're doing in your classroom has research to support it. Specifically, these recommended practices, there are two sections, environment and instructions, that we'll focus on today. And really, it's discussing how practitioners, so you, are providing services and supports in natural and inclusive environments every single day. And then how can you intentionally decide what, when, and how to teach? So we're not going to spend too much time on that, but you have those links in the chat. And then we always have to talk about class, the class observation tool. And if you are familiar with this tool or you need a refresher, Lisa put a link in the chat for you. And what we're going to try to do today is connect how we are adapting our learning with the class tool, because we know that if you have a child with an IEP in your classroom, the person coming in to observe may or may not be aware of that. So how can you be set up for success on the back end to know how to, support a child in the heat of the moment of a class observation? So for teacher sensitivity, we know that lives in the emotional support domain. So we're going to talk about a little bit about teacher sensitivity. Instructional learning formats, that's in the classroom organization domain. And then concept development, which lives under the instructional support domain. So this is not a class training today, but we do want to show you the correlation between your everyday classroom practices and the class tool.
So we're going to base our session today on the building blocks for teaching young children in inclusive settings. And this actually has this framework that we want to share with you. As you can see, if you start from the bottom, the first thing we need to have in place is a quality early childhood program. And that is making sure that all children have access to early childhood. And then next would be the curriculum modifications and adaptions. That's going to be our main focus today, is those curriculum modifications. But we want you to understand that that is just part of the overall framework, because we also, in order to support children with IEPs, we also need to make sure that we're embedding our learning opportunities within the day and all of the activities and routines that we're doing within a classroom, where they might need some more individualized supports or more targeted supports. And then finally, that child-focused instructional strategies. And that's where we're really focusing on the individualization of those skills, where the child might be more related even to the child's IEP. So to be clear, we can do these types of activities. We want to make sure that we have a quality early childhood program for everyone. And even though we're talking about modifications and adaptions today, it is for all children, as Danielle mentioned earlier, within the early childhood classroom. So if you have children who may never have had preschool experience and they're in your preschool for the first time, there might be that there are behaviors that they haven't learned yet, and that you're having to make some modifications and adaptions to support those students. Maybe you have a child who English is not their first language and they come into your classroom. And so you're going to have to find some ways to modify and adapt the activities activities that you're doing in the classroom so that they can get better access to those and be more engaged. So that is our focus today. And even though it is embedded for children, to talk about children with disabilities, it is to make all environments inclusive to meet all children's needs. All right, Danielle.
Okay, now to actually define curriculum modifications. A curriculum modification is a change to the ongoing classroom activity or materials that increases a child's participation and access to a planned activity or routine. So, perfect example. In the picture on the left-hand side, you'll see a teacher sitting around a circle with some children, and they have a carpet that has puzzle pieces. Now, I wrote in there Lisa's name on the green puzzle piece on the right-hand side, because think about a child who has difficulty remaining with the group. Say it's large group, for example. So we already talked about all of your suggestions that you have. Now, another suggestion could be, why not put Lisa's name and picture on her own spot on the carpet? Because then it might be more inviting to Lisa to want to actually sit there because she has something that's hers. Now, if you're wondering, but Danielle, then I might have to do that for all 18 kids in my class. My answer to you is yes, do it. Because why not, right? We're talking about all. We're talking about access and participation for all children. That's what's in the middle box here. So why not give each child a little movable space? You can cut out some cardboard. You can get the silicone little seat dots if you have extra money miraculously. Print out a piece of paper and laminate it. Your options are endless. But in regards to who are we talking about when we're referring to curriculum modifications, we're talking about all children, because all children learn more when they are actively engaged in learning with peers, toys, and classroom materials. So some children will need additional supports to actively participate within classroom routines, and it's how you as the teacher are intentionally setting that up. Lastly, when is it appropriate to utilize a curriculum modification? And this is when a child, for whatever reason, is not able to or is not participating fully in your planned activity. You can see this picture here. There's a little girl with her head down who's clearly upset. You have the teacher behind her, I'd imagine maybe like rubbing her back. And then you have the peer, the little guy in the blue shirt who's like, oh, are you okay? That's what I'm interpreting when looking at this picture. But really, why is a child not participating? First, we have to figure that out. And then we have to utilize our resources to get them to have access to it. So maybe in this picture, it is a favorite peer that we brought in to say, hey, Lisa, come on over here. I know that you're going to get so-and-so ready for the next activity because you're great friends. You're a great friend to him or her.
And the great thing about curriculum modifications is even if you need them in the beginning, it's not something you may need all along once a child learns a behavior or a skill. So a lot of times kids, as Danielle mentioned, are very curious about why somebody has their name on their square and they don't have a name on the square. And so that's where a situation where everyone might come in with a name on their square because that's what other you need that for one or two children, but then once those children no longer need their name, you could start to remove the names from the areas as well. So you're planning ahead of time for those students that you know are going to need help, and you can do that just for those specific students or for the group as a whole.
As Lisa and I are going through this presentation, we forgot to mention, please stop us at any moment if you have a question or a comment. You can unmute, you can type in the chat, however you're comfortable. But please know that we are open to questions and everything, comments.
Okay, so some of the things that you have to think of when you're trying to determine how to use modifications in your classroom is to consider things like the daily schedule, the classroom environment, the activities that you're doing throughout the day. And so some of the areas that we think of are these areas listed here: environment, activities, routines, and transitions. And some of the things that might come to your head as you think through these different types is that for environment, you're considering the furniture and the items in the classroom, how to use them to create the best environment so that children can move freely and flexibly and access things independently. Thinking about what activities are going to be done and what modifications need to happen in order for other children children to participate. I always think of, I would go into circle time in classrooms when I was doing observations. And I remember there would be children who were in wheelchairs, and there would be music playing and all the kids would be dancing and having fun, but a child in a wheelchair would just be sitting in the wheelchair, not engaged in the activity. And it was just something so simple that I would do, where I would either push their wheelchair around so that they could participate with the group as a whole, or even just, hold their arms, or, just kind of move the wheelchair from side to side, but different ways so that they could participate. And those children in those wheelchairs, because they were engaged in doing the same thing that their peers were doing, they would smile, they would be happy, they would laugh. So just thinking of little things like that, that if I'm going to do this activity and I have a child who needs an extra push or encouragement to participate, what modification can I make to make that happen? And then also thinking about some of the routines that are done during the day, like putting up your backpack and lunch, washing your hands, choosing a center. Those are all routines that happen every day throughout a classroom. And they still may need different modifications to participate fully, whether it be an individual schedule so that they know what those steps are to put their backpack away, or having little dots at the different center times so children know how many children can be in a center at once. So you can see that there's all kinds of different ways to integrate these modifications within your classroom to make sure that you're reaching all of these areas.
Okay, so now that you know, or you've been introduced to curriculum modifications, we want to hear from you. So if you all don't mind typing in the chat, a benefit of curriculum modifications is simply supporting inclusion. So is there something that you can think of, like, how would you define what it looks like to support inclusion in your classroom? How would you define what it means to make meaningful progress for a child in your classroom? That's the second benefit. And the third benefit is, what does it mean to you to create a sense of belonging in your classroom for your students? So go ahead, type something in the chat. We want to hear what you all are thinking and kind of what's happening in your classrooms. And we can, go from there and discuss kind of what you guys are thinking. And while you're typing, I'm going to keep talking. So really, when we talk about supporting inclusion, thank you, Stacy, giving classroom jobs. Right there, that to me, that's supporting inclusion and creating a sense of belonging. Because guess what? Even if the child's job is to hold the teacher's water bottle, that's purposeful. That is allowing that children to gain access and participate in a transition, if that's what it is. And you can give classroom jobs to all of the kids. We actually recommend that. If you are going to do classroom jobs, don't just have the teacher's helper for the day. We want you to have a job for every child. Now, is it a lot to keep track of? Yes. I remember very specifically. But every single morning at breakfast, we would review every single child's job. And some of them were bigger jobs, like the teacher's helper or the line leader. But then I literally had a child who would be on vacation, and they thought it was the funniest thing ever. That day, they didn't have a job because they were on vacation, and everybody got a turn. So we have changing your jobs weekly. You can do it however you want, daily, weekly. And Acknowledging and celebrating similarities and differences. There's so many ways you can do this, Autumn. You can read books. You can make a family book, right? You can have your children's family send in pictures and things they love to do, and you can make your own book of your classroom family. What else do we have? Oh, okay. So we could do the same activity, but the expectations are a little bit different. So, especially when you're working with multiple ages, yeah, John, that's really hard. If you have like 2 through 5-year-olds in your setting, we know developmentally, you are working with a range of abilities. And so giving the children an activity, but the way that they complete the activity might look different than the child sitting next to them. And that's okay because it's what they need. Thanks, guys, for playing along. This is fantastic. You already know that there are so many benefits to inclusion in general, and we just wanted to touch on that before we really introduce each type of curriculum modification, because there are 8. And today we're going to walk through each, give you real-time examples. We would love to hear your examples of how you are doing it every day in your classroom. But a little way to keep this interactive and for your own purpose to take notes. This is why we wanted you to have a blank sheet of paper. So if you could take a moment and draw this, just 8 boxes. You can divide up your paper however you want. What we're going to do is each time we review a modification, we're going to have you visually represent, however you want, a way to remember each modification. So once we review each, you'll have a little better of an idea, and I'll show you my own sketches. They're terrible, I'm telling you, but it helps me remember, because when you have 8 different things we're talking about today, it becomes a lot. So you can see Lisa's holding up her paper. She folded it a few times and it gave her 8 boxes, top and bottom. Okay, so we'll give you a moment to do that. And then when you're done, we want you to meet our students. So we mentioned that we're going to use real students and real scenarios to discuss our curriculum modifications today. So Lisa and I were at a conference and we learned about the use of preschool personas, meaning these children exist for real. Anna, Winston, and Emerson. And their parents gave permission to share their information and to let us build upon our knowledge and work with students, because we all don't work with the same students, everyone here in this room today, right? Lisa and I, unfortunately, aren't in our own classrooms right now. So it's really nice to have examples to use to talk about these curriculum modifications. Lisa did put a link into the chat if you're unable to scan the QR code. But what we want you to do is take a moment, open up this document, and read each persona, because what we'll do later on is put you into some breakout rooms and have you discuss how you can really support each child. The personas are not that long, just a few paragraphs, 2 or 3 paragraphs, and you'll learn a little bit about the child, where they come from, and their interest.
We'll give you guys about 5 minutes to finish your boxes and read the personas. Okay, so we want you to think of those children as we go and do the rest of the presentation. Danielle is going to introduce the first 4 areas to you, and then I'll take the last. So Danielle, what adaptations do you have to share?
All right. First, we're going to start with environmental support. And I'm adding into the chat a wonderful module from the Iris Center on designing an effective classroom. And it really dives into these three areas, physical, social, and temporal, when it comes to your environment. So thinking about the physical environment, the picture we're utilizing as an example here is a cookie sheet with some manipulatives on it. Because say you have a child who is still working on keeping their hands to themselves and utilizing their own space. If you have someone who grabs a lot from their peers, why not set them all up with a cookie sheet? Or I was in a classroom the other day and they were playing with marbles and they were building these structures, but each child had their own cookie sheet with a lip on it, so the marbles didn't roll all over the place. How genius is that? You're setting it up for success in advance so that the children are going to be able to participate fully in the activity. Excuse me. Next, we have the social environment. So think about your children who have difficulty playing near other classmates, playing cooperatively. You know, we want to use something that's highly, highly motivating, like bubbles in the picture you can see here. So why not pull a small group of children and engage them in an activity such as bubbles where you are embedding those learned behaviors, those social skills, those, oh, we have to, stay in our own space and watch our bodies. And, there's so much going on with just bubbles, right? But it's enticing enough that the child is more likely to come and participate. And then when you talk about the temporal environment, you're talking about the routines and schedules within your day. And here you'll see a picture of an individualized daily schedule. So they're little tiny pictures of breakfast, small group, reading, whatever it may be. And this can be built in for a child who needs that level of, here's what I'm doing right now, and here's what's coming next. Because of course we want everybody to have a visual schedule in their classroom for all to see, right? A large one that usually lives in the area of circle time, but a child might need one that's just theirs. And then think too about how hard it is to ask children to wait, right? Teaching 3 and 4-year-olds how to wait is, I think, one of the hardest skills. So what you can do, and this is part of the temporal environment, is build in your waiting/transition activity. So say the activity was you're playing with manipulatives on your cookie sheet, just like this picture in the physical environment. But a child is done. They are done with this activity. They are not having it anymore. No one ever said they had to stay there and continue to play with that manipulative. Why not have a built-in waiting activity? So, okay, Lisa, you're all done with this. That's okay. You can go to the carpet and quietly read a book. There's a bin on the carpet readily available for the children to know that they can go there and read a book. And it's up to your discretion what you make that waiting activity. I would not recommend something like Play-Doh. I would not recommend something that's more enticing than the activity itself. But I've also seen teachers create a cart of different things they can do for when they're done and waiting. And right there, we're teaching children how to wait. Because think about ourselves as adults. If we ever have to wait for something, if you're at the doctor's office waiting and line at the grocery store, what's the first thing we're all probably going to do? Pull up our phones, check our text messages, our emails, whatever it may be. So if we as adults are unable to wait with no stimulation, how can we expect children to do the same thing? So here's where your little 8-cell device is going to come in. In your first box, I want you all to write down the words not emotional support, that's class. Environmental support. And then draw or write down however you want to visually represent what environmental support is to you. Here I have a picture of those manipulatives on cookie sheets. That's what my little stick figure drawing of a table and chairs is referring to. While you're drawing that, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about class and talk about how if you are utilizing these environmental supports, you are really touching on that instructional learning format dimension within the classroom organization domain. So if a class observer comes in and sees that you are ready with your materials, they are available, you know where they are, the children know where they are, that's setting yourself up for success. If you have a child who's done with an activity and now is up and running around the classroom because they don't know what to do with themselves, that looks a little less productive. So think about your classroom being a well-oiled machine. That's where you can really use environmental support to your advantage. All right. Next, materials adaptation. This one is where I really want to hear from you guys because I just know you are already utilizing something or have an idea of an adapted material. So while you're thinking, I want to introduce you to 3 if you aren't familiar already. The first one being a pool noodle. You can go to the dollar store, get a pool noodle, cut it up into little pieces, put a marker through it, and then stuff it with something like painter's tape or, something to make the hole a little bit smaller. And then right there, your children who have little tiny hands, you guys, have a way of grabbing that writing utensil if they are not yet used to the 3-finger grasp. The picture in the middle is an adapted book. And this is where the teacher used a board book and then put a piece of Velcro on the inside with a popsicle stick for the child to have access to grab the popsicle stick to turn the page. Because not all children can get their fingers and manipulate a book of that nature. And then the picture on the right-hand side is 2 pictures of visuals, but I want to emphasize the bright background. So think about a child who might have a visual impairment. If you are putting contrast behind the visual, it is more likely that they might be able to see and comprehend the visual that you are asking of them. So think about a child also who is not interested in your visuals, right? If you're always showing the child, sit, for example, during circle time, and they just could literally care less, why not print one out with their favorite color in the background? And then they can hold it themselves and it's theirs, and whatever means you need to allow that child to have access to utilizing that visual. So what are you guys using in your classrooms? Do you have any type of material that's adapted that you use on a daily basis? You can come off mute. You can type it in the chat. What are you all using? There are things you can buy. There are things you can make. We don't always have to spend $1 million on a pair of adapted scissors. Oh, thank you, Lisa. She just added in the chat from Head Start. We love Head Start. They have amazing resources, you guys. This is a 15-minute in-service suite that you can utilize and watch on your own time. But while you all are thinking, we can also move on to our visual representation, where you can draw a material adaptation. You can see I attempted to draw the pool noodle around the marker. Kind of looks like an interesting looking planet, but go ahead, let us know what you are drawing on your 8-cell device. And while you do that, I'm going to talk about class again, because think about teacher sensitivity. Think about being sensitive to the needs of the child. If you give a child a paintbrush, the really, really thin ones, and they just are not utilizing it, they're not painting, they're not participating in the activity, why not then find a fat paintbrush or ones that has the knob on the top? Why not let them paint with their hands? However, they are going to have access to the activity. If you are providing that, you are being sensitive to the child's needs. And I see in the chat, oh yes, sensory cushion seats. During circle time, if you have children who need to move a little bit, we've seen them in all shapes and sizes. We've seen them with kind of like some, they're like rubber and they wobble back and forth. I imagine that might be what you're referring to, Stephanie. That's a fantastic idea because then the child isn't expected. We've seen some of the cube chairs in classrooms. If they don't like that cube chair, they don't have to sit in it. Give them something else. Egg crayons versus chubby crayons versus normal crayons. Absolutely. And they make those egg crayons. They make like character crayons. There are so many things that you can utilize. Thank you for those recommendations. I hope you all were able to somehow, some way visually represent materials adaptations. And I'll move on to activity simplification, where we are now simplifying a task by breaking it down into smaller parts or reducing the number of steps to increase the likelihood of independent success. Take hand washing, for example. We know, as early childhood practitioners, just as it's very difficult to teach children how to wait, teaching children how to wash their hands is quite the journey. Because if you leave them to their own devices, it turns into a water park. We're playing with the soap and the water in the sink, and we're, utilizing every single paper towel we can. Why not break it down with visuals? So that's what you see on the left-hand side. You have hand washing steps, broken down, water on, hands wet, rub hands with soap, rinse, water off, dry. We've seen teachers take it a step further where on the paper towel dispenser, they have a visual for 1, 2, 3, rip. Meaning pump the thing 3 times, right? Because we know in schools, they don't have the automatic hand dryers all the time. And then the picture on the right-hand side is trying to describe how you can set up the environment to make the activities more simplified. So you see the soap dispenser on the wall in this picture, but you also see the soap dispenser on the sink. I tried to insert a little black strip to refer to Velcro. So that way the soap dispenser isn't sliding all over the place. We've seen teachers who have like a weighted soap dispenser. It looks like a little duck. It's so cute. That way the soap isn't going all over the place. The children are set up for success. And the main thing to remember with activity simplification is if you're familiar with backwards chaining, that's where this comes into play. So that means you want the child to complete the last step on their own. So you help them with steps 1 through 5. And then step 6, they're doing on their own. When they do that independently, you work backwards. Okay, now we're going to do steps 1 through 4 together. The child does steps 5 and 6 independently, working all the way to full independence. For my visual representation for activity simplification, I drew a first then chart because to me, sometimes students need it broken down even further. And it could be first clean up, then snack, right? Or it could be, thinking about hand washing, first water on, then soap, whatever it is. So however you all want to visually represent activity simplification, go ahead and do that. And here, when you think about the class tool, right? When you think about, there are a lot of examples, and I'm specifically back at teacher sensitivity, because if you have a child who's not completing a task and is becoming upset, is it because there's too many steps involved? Is it because it's too complicated and we just aren't aware of it? So if you are aware of the child's need for activity simplification, then you are being sensitive to their needs. Lisa put another head start, thank you, activity simplification link in the chat for you to save and go look at later. All right. My last one and my favorite one to talk about is child preferences, because this always sparks conversation. And what we're talking about here is if a child is not taking advantage of the available opportunities, why not integrate the things that they love? So the T-Rex dinosaur on the left-hand side is supposed to represent a toy. If you have a child who will not participate in, say, circle time, why not let them hold a preferred toy? Now, I've had teachers say to me, but Danielle, then the dinosaur just becomes something that they hit their peers with. Or, but Danielle, then every single child is going to want to hold a dinosaur. And this is where we can really start to utilize your peers to your advantage. So you are going to have peers who understand that, oh, Lisa is the one who needs to hold the dinosaur, but she's learning. She's learning how to sit in circle time, and you know how to sit in circle time. So why don't you help me show Lisa how to sit during circle time, right? And then, trust me, I get it. To give every single child a preferred toy to hold during circle time is a huge distraction. But what you can do is keep your circle time interactive and build in materials anyway. So if you're going to do a morning song where everyone stands up and dance, why not let them dance with the dancing scarves, and then the child can still hold their dinosaur and everybody else has something to manipulate? You see where I'm going with this? You don't have to let every child hold their favorite stuffy, right? The picture in the middle is a picture of outer space, and this is where we can build in preferences throughout your classroom. So you can have it in within your centers. Say you have a child who only ever plays in one center. Why not put a little bit of outer space in every center, and then they might be more likely to play in that center. The picture all the way to the right is the guy holding the thumbs up. This is referring to a child's favorite person. So in your classroom, I'd imagine you have more than one adult. I hope you do in preschool. So if you have a child who you know responds better to one person over the other, use that to your advantage and don't take it personally. If I know that so-and-so in my classroom is probably about to have a meltdown and that person prefers Lisa, my co-teacher, I'm going to send Lisa over there. No harm, no foul. Because it's whatever is going to support that child to move on and participate and have access to the activities. Now, for your visual representation, if you're going what I'm going with, I drew a picture of a car because who doesn't love cars, right? Who doesn't love to look at pictures of cars and play with cars? That is something that is so easy to implement in your early childhood setting. If you have children who have a heavy interest in cars. And while you're filling this out, and before Lisa gets started, again, I have to bring up class here. If you're embedding the children's preferences, not only are you being a sensitive teacher, but you are actually hitting points in the regard for child's perspective category as well, because that means you are seeing the world through the children's lens. So if a child's world revolves around dinosaurs, you guys, that's okay. Utilize it. It is okay to harness a child's extreme interest and use that to everyone's advantage. It'll make your life as a teacher much easier, but it'll also make the child's day much more comforting and welcoming and all of the things. You already know Lisa put a Head Start link in the chat for you for child preferences. And now I am going to pass it over to Lisa to complete the last 4 of our curriculum modifications.
All right, everyone, I'm going to take over having the discussion about special equipment. And you can see here there's 3 pictures as well. And special equipment are those types of adaptive devices or other special devices that allow children to participate and increase their participation when they're completing activities around the classroom. I wanted to start on the right-hand side with the picture of the iPad. And this is a communication device that children would be using in order to communicate when they are might be nonverbal or not have the language skills that they need to interact with their peers. I've seen this done in classrooms really well where the teacher has also taught not the adults in the classroom know how to use the device, but also they've taught the children in the classroom, the peers within the classroom, how to use the device. So I've actually been in a classroom where the child who needs the device is communicating with a peer in the classroom who has learned how to use the device. And it really gives a voice to the children who need the voice in order to be able to participate in class. The middle picture is a picture of a slant board, and on that slant board is a game that this child is using with a switch. So you can see, I don't know, it's hard to see, but you can see that his little left hand is on the yellow and blue switch that's there. So by pushing the switch, there's activities that are, the activity board is moving and things are happening based on when the child hits the switch. And that board itself is placed on that slant board. And finally, we had talked earlier also about seating, but if you can see here, there's some adaptive seating here. This could be great for children who can sit up independently, but may not have either might be smaller in size or maybe a child who's in a wheelchair who can sit up and be at a table with other children in the classroom. And this type of table and chairs can be used for that type of situation. Now, I will tell you that I did not draw any of these pictures. So all of these pictures are going to be how Danielle represents these ideas in her head. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is so cute and this is perfect. So for Danielle's representation of special equipment, she has an adult pulling a wagon with children in it. A lot of times you see that another similar thing would be like the long cord that children use to go learn how to line up, and they have a handle on each part where they would align, and then they walk down the hall with that. But a lot of times in family day homes and in child care settings, you see a wagon being used to transport children from place to place if they need that support, especially for like fire drills and that type of thing. So I think that's a great way to think about special equipment. It's just something that is extra that can be used to make sure that we're meeting the needs of children.
And Lisa, can I take a moment to discuss class?
I was hoping because so you guys, Danielle and I do this presentation a lot, but she's taken off doing this a little bit more than me lately. And so I was like, I love that you're adding the class language to this, but I was like, uh-oh. So yes,
Don't worry.
So Danielle's going to fill in where we need fill in here.
And thinking about that, I'm going to go back. So this picture of the child in the middle utilizing the switch to activate the toy. Think about the concept development that's happening here, you guys. You can talk about why the button is making something move. You can talk about the wheels and the gears spinning. There is so much language that you can incorporate here. So you're hitting language modeling if you want to talk about gears, switches, advanced language, but also for concept development, talking about cause and effect, talking about making predictions. What do you think will happen when we press the button, right? And you see that there's another child who's interested. So maybe the child manipulating the button doesn't have that language to answer those questions. You can still involve a peer and involve the child with the switch in increasing their concept development. All right.
And the one thing I also want to point out, like a lot of people think, oh, language modeling. I am a teacher of a classroom where all the children are nonverbal, and I can't do language modeling. But if you're using the communication boards, the devices, and the visuals that are available to children within your classroom, then you do have ways to expand language within your classroom setting.
And in the
So
chat, Stephanie just added the use of noise canceling headphones. What an amazing tool.
yes, love that.
Look, I was
It's one.
overstimulated as a teacher half the time in the classroom. I could have used my noise canceling headphones, but to allow children, it's fantastic.
I'm an adult, um, and I get overstimulated when all of my 14 family members are at my house for, family dinner. And I noticed one night when I was actually doing an online training when they were all coming in, and I had my beats on and was listening to what was happening, but I also realized that it blocked out all that extra stimulation that comes at me a lot. And it was just a really different way of experiencing the environment. So sometimes I will, when they're all over, they're very loud. We've got a lot of stuff going on in our family, but I will go grab my beats and put them on, and they know that's just me. It's just something I do because we've got a lot of loud talkers in our family. So,
And think
all
about
right.
that membership, Lisa, right?
Yes.
Having a child who otherwise would not be accessing the environment because it's too loud. Now you're creating
Yes.
a sense of belonging.
I
All right.
used to, that's a great point. We're going to move on, but I do want, that's a great point because actually what used to happen is I would go up to my bedroom for a little bit because I would have to escape that for a little bit.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right, Danielle. So instead, putting on the headphones and staying in with the everyone else is a very different way to experience my family being there and being around me. That was a great point. All right.
Thank you,
So
Stephanie, for bringing up the noise canceling
yes,
headphones.
yes. And I always love to share private stuff about myself with the world, so that's okay. Um, so adult support, you see Danielle dropped a link in there from the Head Start site. But this is really when an adult is intervening to support that child's participation or learning. The picture to the left, this is they're using ASL to communicate. The parent or the teacher, whoever you want that adult to be, is communicating using ASL, signing please, and the child is able to then repeat that behavior because that's being modeled for them. So whenever a child does an action or uses a sign, the adult is making eye contact with that child and giving reinforcement and encouragement for using that. And then on the right-hand side, you see a little boy and another adult playing. The little boy in this picture was playing with the Lego set, and the dad joined in the play, and that was being led by the child, but then introduced a new storyline to the play because if the child doesn't have a lot of imagination, for example, doesn't really know how to make believe yet, and is regularly just always playing with the Legos, the dad's using that situation to then introduce the bear and then having the bear talk and share a story and then using those blocks as part of that story with the bear. So it's a way to extend thinking and imagination by using adult support and something that the child already enjoys doing. This is one of my favorite, the middle here is one of my favorite visuals because when I first saw this, it was really eye-opening for me. So if you notice here at the bottom of the triangle, these are when children are more dependent on adults, these activities, or they're more restrictive in how they're being provided as an adaptation. So we want to make sure that children are more independent and that the supports that we're giving them are least restrictive. And so those are the things at the top. So you can see independence is all the way at the top there. Full physical hand over hand contact is all the way at the bottom. That is definitely the most dependent support that we can provide. But I want everyone to pay attention to the green box that says verbal right there. And you can call out or you can just type in the box. Would you expect that to fall somewhere differently on that hierarchy? And I will tell you that as somebody who's been in a lot of classrooms observing, I see a lot of verbal supports happening in classrooms. What do you guys think about that? Would you expect it to fall somewhere else? So I'll share what I thought. When I first saw this, I was really surprised to see that visual support, for me at that time, that visual supports were actually less restrictive than verbal supports. And the reason why is because we are practicing so many verbal supports in classrooms, even in early childhood special ed classrooms, where you expect to see more visuals. A lot of times we're going in and we're not seeing the visuals that children would most benefit from. And the surprising thing is that when there's a visual support in place, for example, we mentioned earlier about the signs that are at centers that tell you how many people can be in a center at a time. So if I see 3 dots on that sign, I immediately can look and know that 3 people need to be in that center. I look over to see how many people are there. I've been able to do that independently, more independently. And if you think about it, like even if a peer is there, a peer usually says to a child who's entering that space, nope, we can only have 3. We already have 3. So when we use visuals in the classroom, it takes less time from the teacher and less attention from the teacher to provide the verbal cue. And if we're providing verbal cues more often than visual cues, then it is much harder to decrease those verbal cues than it is the use of the visual cues. And if you think about it as adults, when we're driving, we see a stop sign from, well, depending on what our vision's like. I mean, you can see a stop sign several feet away and you know what that means because we know how to use visuals. So we use visuals all the time in our daily practice. And so using visuals is actually less restrictive for children than using verbal cues. And that is just something that really pointed out to me. So when we go to our boxes on the next page, this is a little boy or a child was playing blocks, and the adult, I'm assuming in this picture, decided to enter the play of the child. And as they started talking about how the blocks were like buildings and they were building tall buildings and had the discussion that led to construction. And then there is the wrecking ball that's hitting the block of toys. So again, the adult is entering the play to provide the support that the child needs to increase their ability to make believe and play in that situation.
And right there, that's concept development in class. The wrecking ball, introducing that. But I also want to point out when Lisa was referring to the prompting hierarchy and how verbal cues are more restrictive than visual cues, think about the behavior management indicator within,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so bear with me. In the classroom organization domain of the class tool, there is the behavior management piece. And this is where if you as the adult are providing the expectations, the reminders, and you're clearly stating what's expected of the children, then you are hitting on behavior management. However, it makes me wonder if we should be doing it a little more visually, right? So instead of, say it's choice time and there's 2 minutes left, and instead of just yelling, almost time to clean up, 2 minutes to clean up, almost going to clean up, guys, why not have a first then visual of first clean up, then outside? So the children know, all right, guys, we're going to clean up because we're getting ready to go outside. That right there is everything class wants to hear you doing. So it just makes me think we could do it visually as well. And then they're less dependent on us to be the prompt.
Peer support is also one of my favorites. I will share that we are currently there's an inclusive classroom profile that looks at how inclusive practices are being implemented in classrooms. And we use that tool in different ways in supporting inclusive classrooms across the state. And adults working to help with peer support is something that we don't see as often in our classrooms across the state as we would like to see. And so we forget sometimes that when we have inclusive settings, we have peers that we can utilize to help to help children interact together, to help them feel a sense of belonging, and to help support them in different ways. But more importantly, teachers and adults in a classroom cannot be everywhere at once. And so when we rely on peers in the classroom to help children practice skills, we are taking some of that burden off of the adults that are in there, because you can very easily, you can see that children, they want to help. They just don't always know how to help. So it might be that at the beginning of the year, you have to teach some of the peers how to push the wheelchair, for example, in a safe manner, or how to you understand a word that a child is trying to say. And then when when they learn that and they know how to do that, they can be the ones to help. The other thing is encouraging peer support in children's play. So when a child is playing, they might choose to play by themselves all the time. And being able to say to a child and a peer in the classroom, hey, so-and-so's playing in blocks. Maybe you want to go over and help build, can you help so-and-so build a really tall tower? And again, and asking children to help in any different way, they love that. But it can also be used in the opposite way to show that people who might appear different or might have a disability can also be leaders in their classrooms by if you know somebody that really knows how to I don't know, make really cool things with Play-Doh, for example, then being able to tell another student who is playing with Play-Doh, hey, why don't you ask so-and-so to help you play with that Play-Doh? And that child with a disability is then supporting another child doing a skill that they have a strength in, so that, again, that peer support can work both ways, but it's also improving that sense of belonging and membership. So peers in the classroom can always be used to support their friends in the classroom. And that is perfect with positive climate. When we look at positive climate with the class, what we see is that it's really it's the adults and the children, the peers within the classroom, all interacting in a positive way, enjoying each other's company, smiling, being, using kind words to each other. So here in our little picture of peer support, you can see that there's one of the children are saying, let's play together. And they're holding a block in their hand so that they can play together and have that peer support. And then finally, the eighth adaptation is invisible support. And that looks at how we are naturally arranging events or activities within the environment to support children without being so obvious about it. So, for example, one of the things that I always think about is when there's a child who might be trying to, they might have a favorite toy and you want to teach them how to ask for help. So you might put that into a plastic container where the child can see it but might not quite be able to reach it. And so you intentionally did that so that the child will ask you for help or at least point to what they want. So that's kind of one way that we think of invisible support sometimes, but I think there's a lot of invisible support that we do in classrooms that we don't always realize that we're doing. For example, on the left-hand side, these are sticks with children's names in it. And in one can, it says had a turn, and the other can says needs a turn. And so you might have those sticks in there so that you know that you're going to see a stick and pull that out sooner than another stick because you know that that child might not be able to wait as long to provide their answer and pick their center as another child is. It also makes sure that you're calling across the classroom on people instead of just one or two who are usually most verbal. So there's different ways that you can support how you're calling names in a classroom for participation. The other thing is all the way to the end, you see a bunch of items that can go into a water table. And so being able to use that water table, you're switching out the items within that water table so that you can get children to play and participate in different ways. Maybe it's some children aren't able to use the eyedropper tubes that are in the water table, so you need to get bigger ones in there. And so you know that everybody, the child wants to play at the water table but can't use the small little eyedroppers that are currently in the table. All you're doing is adding bigger eyedroppers so that that child can hold on and participate. So just simple things like that, making those supports available. And then finally, in the middle, this little girl is doing head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So maybe the invisible support would be that you've been working to the side and the family have been working on that particular song. And this child doesn't usually like to sit in the circle to sing a song, but you're choosing a song that you know that child is already successful with, and you're incorporating that into your center time. And so then the child can actually participate and engage with the rest of the class because you had planned for that, knowing that that child could do that activity. So we're going to, the 8th box is invisible support. There's also another first then chart here. I think of that also like first you've got to do your listen to story time, and that might be something the child doesn't want to sit and do, but maybe they really love music. So you're choosing the first and then items that go on the chart so that something is more rewarding after something that might be less rewarding or less preferred by the child. And when you think about how that aligns with class, you can think about productivity, how you're providing access to different types of activities with different materials that you set out, and learning formats. And that's setting up the environment for success before or naturally within the activity. So you're able to, again, incorporate the things that we're teaching are not something new today. These are all things that can be incorporated into what you already are doing for class.
Okay, Lisa, we only have 3 participants left. So I'm thinking we could just do this as a whole group and talk about
so
the
too.
personas, and especially because we only have a few minutes left. But this is where we were going to send you into breakout rooms. But I'll let Lisa introduce the activity. I just wanted to share that we'll stay in this large group.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you guys in this group, we'll pick the same one. Let's pick a persona. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through that persona and we're going to answer some of the questions that are at the bottom. So the first question for the group is, do you want to choose Winston, Emerson, or Anna for our activity? If you're watching this later in the VC Lounge, you can choose any of these 3 characters on your own that you want to review and answer the questions for as well. But what the goal of today's session is that we are just going to practice putting some of these adaptations in place based on these children's needs and strengths that have been identified in the personas. So, okay. We have 3 people. One says Anna, one says Winston, and one says fine either way. So that's funny. Okay, Anna. All right, let's go with her. So she's at the bottom if you are clicked on the link that we dropped in. So I dropped a bit.ly link in. I'll drop it in again. And if you go there, that's Anna's area. And so we have her here, and you guys were able to review her earlier, so I'm not sure you'll need any additional time reviewing. But if so, just let us know by indicating that in the box. But the discussion question is, the teacher would like her to start verbally expressing her choices in the classroom instead of allowing her friends to choose for her. And looking at some of these curriculum modifications that we've discussed today, are there modifications that you might use to help her express her choices during snack or center time? So just what is one strategy you would choose, and what would you do for that strategy to address that behavior? So she's coming from Georgia, a country in Western Asia. Okay. Stacy said she would choose a visual aid for choice. Okay. And so that could be either invisible support where we're setting that up to share the making, so for example, say it's snack time and we know that her favorite choice might be apple juice. So we purposely make sure that there's an apple juice there and there's say an orange juice, and then we're showing the pictures and asking which choice that she wants. But also that could be environmental support where the child is looking at using that visual aid within the environment to make a decision, to make a choice. Danielle's filling it out for us.
Oh, yeah. And I also highlighted materials adaptation because we had one participant specify that.
Yes. So a visual adaptation, we have a, I don't know that that's in your folder, but we actually have, in order to aid with like discussion, snack talks. And so there's pictures. So you might ask the question to the table of what's your favorite superhero? And so for this little girl, this might be very difficult for her to be able to discuss or share, but having a picture of a bunch of superheroes on a one pager, and then any kid can point to who their superhero is, that's their favorite. But that would also, again, be providing a different way for her to participate with her group. So is there anything you want to add to this, Danielle, before we wrap up?
Just that I want to show how these are all layering on top of each other. Just to get Anna to express her choices during snack and center, we chose 4 curriculum modifications. So you can see how you're already doing this all day, every day, and it's not just one. You can do multiple at the same time. But yes, let me get back to the presentation.
I'm sorry, I was so focused on snack time. You're right. So at center time, it could be that you're using a modified book where children can, where she can actually pull items out of the book as the conversation goes, or maybe there are words in her own language that match the words in the English language. Thank you for the snack talk tip sheets. So yes.
Oh,
But yes,
okay.
a peer could help too. So you all have already provided several ways that we could help support her in those just in those 2 areas. So yeah. So these are the resources that we use. These are some of the resources we use today. And so we have a resource folder that, again, you can scan here, or we also drop the link in the chat box so that you can see the materials. We have some STEMI materials as well for adaptations and modifications. And then are these links you put in the chat? We can definitely send all the links so that you all have those and that whoever's watching the video can access them as a standalone page also. And then finally, we have an evaluation that if you go in and you complete this evaluation, you'll automatically get a certificate of participation. And we also have a link that
Yeah,
we
I
can
got
share
that
with
too,
you.
Lisa.
Perfect. So again, we can add that link also to an email. Do we have for VACI, do we have all the participants' emails?
Yes, ma'am. We will make sure that you get those.
Okay, so we'll just make sure that we send you guys a follow-up that has our materials and our resources in it so that you guys can look at that later and then also complete the evaluation to get your certificate of participation for today. And yeah, it's literally the link for the certificate will be included in that email, Stacy. Well, thank you everyone for participating today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Danielle, for being here with us today and sharing this wonderful information. And thank you to all of you for participating with us today. Before we end, I just want to remind you that registration continues for our our annual conference, which is happening in Hampton, Virginia, March 12th through the 14th. So there is still time to register. We hope to see you there. Thank you all so much.